Hey guys, it's Merlini with Mad Rares with Merlini for the December 11th Playday. Or, yeah, December 11th. There are a lot of matches today. All of these are best of ones except for the G League matchup as well as the first Natalic Pro League match. So let's get on to the Southeast Asian games. Hans Reborn versus Loyat. HR kind of crushed Myth, who kind of crushed Loyat. It seems pretty reasonable to bet on Hans Reborn here. I don't know that much about either team, but I'll take my chances with HR. Southeast Asia, best of one. You should know your risk. Next one that we have is Duskbin versus Neon. Duskbin actually seems like one of the top teams in GPL. They beat out Hans as well as RRQ, so they should be at the top or at least tied for the top. This is terrible returns for a best of one, 0.8 or 0.9 now versus 4 if you bet on Duskbin. But Neon just has not been performing very well. I think 3 of their last losses were just not very close at all, and it was against teams very comparable to Duskbin's skill. A lot of people have been whining to me about losing rares on favorites, but I did not click your place bet button, so you should know your risk going in. If you don't like betting on large favorites, then don't do it. Next one that we have is LGD.China versus DT. DT is actually like somewhat of an unknown team, but they have had some pretty good wins. They beat Tongfu one game in a best of 3, and they also beat Forlove, and Forlove beat DK 1 out of 3 games in a best of 3 too. So this bet is not as safe as some of the other bets, and it reminds me a lot of the DK versus Titan, where Titan actually won one game versus DK the second game, and some people were pretty scared. I didn't actually bet on that because I haven't seen Titan's performance in a few weeks, especially since they changed their roster with Miracle, and DT I haven't seen them play in a good couple weeks time either, so don't know enough about DT, so I'll be abstaining from this bet. Next one that we have is Neon versus HR. This is very similar to the Duskbin versus Neon bet. Duskbin and HR seem very close to in skill level, so if I'm betting on Duskbin here, I'll most likely be betting on HR here unless Neon just pulls something crazy in their games and manages an upset. Next one that we have is Myth versus Duskbin. I actually think this is one of the best bets of the day. Duskbin is roughly equivalent in skill to RRQ, who just crushed Myth. So if Duskbin beat RRQ and RRQ crushed Myth, Duskbin should be able to beat Myth, if not crush Myth. I could be wrong, but I haven't really seen Myth overperforming lately, and Duskbin seems consistently better. So I'll be betting on Duskbin. I think it should be more like 40-60 Duskbin, or even 45-55 Duskbin. Both of those would lead me to bet on DB. Next one that we have is HR versus Myth. Somewhat similar to this bet. Hans Reborn may have lost to both Duskbin and RRQ, but they are still a good team and they contain plenty of talent. They do have ping issues and they're using stand-ins, but they're still a pretty good team. I would give them the slight edge in this matchup, maybe like 52-48 Hans Reborn instead of Myth. If you're hardcore or you don't live in America, you can watch each team's prior games. Hans Reborn will be playing versus Loyat earlier and versus Neon. Myth will be playing versus Duskbin if you want to get a better gauge of how these odds should stack up. I'll be sleeping, so I won't and can't change my bet, and I'll be less informed than other people. So take my information at your own risk. Next one that we have is LED Lead Ion Dreams versus Neon. Dreams has not had really impressive results lately, but Neon has been really underwhelming lately too. I looked at Dreams' Dota buff. They have some weird picks, Ursa versus Myth, and Stardar without other minus armor versus Duskbin, and I don't really trust them with my rares. I definitely don't trust Neon either, because Neon lost to Myth, RRQ, and Loyat, but all these teams are clearly a good deal better than Neon, so it's not really a good gauge. I'll be abstaining from this bet because I don't have really any information about either of these teams. Empire versus OSG. OSG upset VP, but VP was just playing utterly terribly when they lost. OSG also lost to the Retry, though. So I think overall, Oslick Gaming is one of the most inconsistent teams, but I could potentially see them upsetting Empire here. It's either a one rare bet on OSG, or no bet at all. Star Ladder does not treat my rares very well. Next one that we have is Fnatic versus Mouse, and D2L odds 71-29. As you can see here, my odds are about 65-35. If anybody saw the Fnatic versus Poseidon game, that was just terrible play from Fnatic, and if they play like that versus Mouse, they're probably going to lose too. Poseidon played decently that game, but Fnatic's item choices, their general gameplay, and Hani's Magnus all led to that upset. This is a best of 3, so that means less variance, which leads more people to bet on Fnatic. But Mouse is also not that bad. They beat SSD, and their newer player Exist seems to be doing fairly well too. I watched the game that he played in the other day. I'm going to bet small on Mouse here, or not at all. If it gets to 75-25, I'll definitely bet on Mouse. We have 3 more star ladder matches, and then Natalic, and then last star ladder. So Poseidon versus Empire. I think Poseidon is a little bit overrated right now. Teams just can't really seem to close out against Poseidon. I think Fnatic had like a 15k gold lead, maybe more, 12k I think was the exact number, and VP also had like a 20k gold lead versus Poseidon, but both of those teams unable to close out. I'll take my chances here and bet on Empire because I think Poseidon is overrated and odds are inflated because of poor play from other teams rather than really good play by them. VP just kind of let them farm up, and Fnatic kind of just let them farm up too, chose bad engages, no good RPs, so it wasn't really like excellent play from Poseidon. They did play decently though. It's not like they clumped up for RPs and you know, played passively and didn't take risk while farming, so that's a small bonus for them, but overall I think they are weaker. So if Empire loses to OSG, I may reconsider this bet, but as of right now I'll be betting on Empire. Next one that we have is TR versus Poseidon. Poseidon definitely has the upper edge here, as you can tell by the odds, but TR is not as bad as everybody thinks. If Poseidon beats Empire, I think I'll place a 1 rare bet on TR, just because it'll be like close to 80-20, something like that. Otherwise, I'm going to abstain from this bet. Navi versus Spara, the odds are actually not as bad as I thought. 1.6 rare for 4, that's actually not bad for a T1 team playing against a tier 2/2.5 team. Navi actually hasn't played a tier 2/2.5 team in a while. They played against a lot of good teams. DK in the semifinals of MLG, Alliance, Vici, Fnatic, Sigma, all of these really good teams recently. So I don't actually know how they perform versus lesser teams. Similar to Fnatic, Fnatic was playing really well versus all these good teams, but when it comes to a team like whoever they lost to yesterday, Poseidon, they just didn't play very well at all. So teams generally play a little bit differently versus really good teams than versus really bad teams. So there's like that uncertainty there, but Navi's Navi. I think a Spirit is slightly overrated too. I'll take my chances with Navi. I think the odds should be like 75-25, maybe a little bit better for Navi. Next one that we have is the Natalic League. This is a best of 1. TBD is the loser of Fnatic versus Mouse, and they will be facing off versus Rox.Kiss. Rox.Kiss sometimes just straight up outdrafts the other team, and even with slightly worse execution, they can still win out just because of their good draft. Godblack has one of the crazier drafters, and sometimes crazy is good. Rox.Kiss, though, has been looking a little weak lately. They lost fairly badly to Empire, and they lost to EG, but they did manage to take down SSD 2 games in a row. It looked like a scrim from their Dota buff, but I'm not exactly sure what that was from. I'm unlikely to bet against Fnatic if Fnatic ends up losing, unless odds are really skewed, and I'm likely to bet on Mouse because I think odds may be slightly more skewed than 55-45. I think it should probably be like 55 Rox.Kiss, 45 Mouse, especially if Mouse loses, and I could definitely see them being like 60-40, maybe like 62-48 or 62-38 if Mouse ends up losing versus Fnatic, especially if Mouse loses bad. But if I watch a Fnatic Mouse game, well, I actually won't be able to, but if you watch a Fnatic Mouse game and Mouse just looks awful or Fnatic like looks terrible, you can use that information for your own betting purposes. Unfortunately, I won't be casting Star Ladder, and I won't be able to watch any of the early games. Last one that we have is the Retry versus Navi. Not interested in betting on this matchup versus the Retry. Retry, they're people think they're bad, but they're not that bad, and odds are 0.9 versus 4. Navi sometimes just screws around in early group stages and leagues, so just not taking my chances with this one. There are plenty of matches today, plenty of other bets to bet on. So thank you guys for watching. If you like my videos, you can subscribe to me at youtube.com/MerliniDota. I'll be back tomorrow for more Mad Rares with Merlini.